months in PropTech have seen some extraordinary deals done around PropTech's selling and investment levels. And so a PropTech conference wouldn't be a PropTech conference without us talking to founders about what that journey looks like. So I'm really, and some of the biggest deals that have been done over the last 12 months are on the stage today. So thank you. I wanted to welcome Chris SPANOS from IDS, Sarah Bell from mother of Rita from AIRE, and Pete Matthews from Realtair. Please join me in welcoming them. Oh, okay, hang on. So guys, welcome. Thanks for being on the panel and thanks for talking about this topic because, you know, that selling is sometimes a little bit delicate. But if each of you could give me your elevator pitch, because you're obviously very good at them, and then just explain how much your business either was invested in or sold for. Pete, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here. Probably first thing of clarification, not sold. Had investment, which has been terrific. So we're a middleware platform in the real estate sales transactional space. We have a sales transactional space between prospecting through to settlement. We integrate with a series of different suppliers, many of you here in this room, just to provide greater efficiency, transactional transparency, and auditability to the sales transaction process.
Mm-hmm. And how much did REA invest in you? Are you able to say?
I'm not sure. It's public.
You're not sure how much they invested?
We've had a couple of raises, but it'd be circa 25 million.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Says.
So I am co-founder of AIRE and mother of Rita. So Ian Campbell is the CEO and Rita's dad. So together we started a journey about 5 years ago, and a year ago we were acquired by CoreLogic. I think the strategic motivation behind that was to extend their capabilities into other functions that would assist real estate agents. And so we work primarily in the lead generation space, and Rita is a digital employee, and her job is to create conversations that build trust. So every single residential real estate agent starts their day with the same problem. They've got a database of contacts, but who do I call and what do I say? So, you know, we came up with Rita as a effective means of storytelling, how we push a bunch of data around. And her job is to really connect conversation topics with the right contact at the right time for the right reason. And then through her evolution or growing up, she's learned how to have those conversations herself and then just simply hand those over once they're completed. So I won't be disclosing our figure because ladies don't tell.
Nice.
And we're a private company purchased by private equity, so we don't have to. But look, everyone's very happy.
Excellent. So, Chris.
So the short elevator pitch, if I can sum it up, we started focusing on what we knew, which is automated valuation models, indices, suburb level statistics, the kind of things that corporates, fintechs would produce, trying to build a better widget, because traditionally those models were overseas models localized for Australia, not taking into account often attribute data in other countries is a lot richer, whereas in Australia, so if you look at New South Wales, because land tax is on unimproved value, there's not a lot of incentive for the state government to collect attribute data. Then we realised selling against the incumbents is not a great move, given that CoreLogic, PropTrack, Domain, who ultimately acquired us, already have AVMs. But we did notice there was a gap in the market, that government is basically where banks were 20 years ago, where statutory valuations are done on Excel spreadsheets. They then fax those or email those Excel spreadsheets to the State Revenue Office, etc. So we sort of pivoted the business in 2019 and we actually acquired a small platform from Thomson Reuters. We're able to renew a tender with the Victorian Valuer General, so we now do all of the statutory valuations for Victoria, and I'm hopefully very close to picking up another large state government that we'll be able to announce in a couple of months. In terms of my role, the company was founded in late 2013, really kicked off in 2014 by 3 founders. I actually joined the business in 2016 when one of the 3 founders left, and I became effectively a late stage co-founder. So it actually took from 2014 till 2021 when we were acquired. And I can say what we were acquired for purely because it's publicly announced. So we're acquired for $60 million with a $99 million earn out over 5 years. And it's fair to say the co-founders are very happy.
Yeah. And the Domain was your purchaser.
And Domain acquired us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I love how we've got Domain, REA, and CoreLogic sort of investing in new stage PropTech on this stage. So for each of you, did you approach them or did they approach you? And Sarah, I'm going to start with you because, you know, ladies always like to be asked, I guess, right?
I've started something here. Look, you know, I think for Ian and myself, our journey was about how do we take Rita to the next level. And we'd bootstrapped Rita. He sent me a photo of this whiteboard that he'd taken back in our early days where, you know how teenagers couch surf? We office surfed for a year. We just kind of showed up to people's workplaces and worked there for a while. And there was this whiteboard with like the numbers 1 to 12 on it. And when in our first year we had to get 12 customers or we had to grow up and get real jobs, and that was going to be devastating. So we bootstrapped for the first year. We were customer funded for a big part of our journey. We took on a very small seed investment and then we're able to go from there. But we knew that to go to the next level, we weren't going to do that with our, you know, personal property holdings. Yep. And our respective partners probably had something to say about that as well. So we were looking for investment to take Rita to the next level, a strategic investment in technology, but also partnerships in data and new global markets and things like that. And you know, it was a competitive round for us. We had lots of people interested. And that's a really good position to be in. We didn't actually need the money. We weren't going to go bankrupt. We were accidentally profitable, which probably meant, you know, that we should have hired a couple more developers early. But so we had this, you know, competitive round, and CoreLogic said they looked at our 5-year plan and they said, well, how about we just buy you now and you can sleep at night, and here's the keys to the property data universe and have fun. And we thought that sounded like an excellent idea.
Awesome. What about you, Pete?
So ours kind of happened a little bit by accident. We approached REA about data. So that's how that conversation began. At the time as well, we had acquired a training company called Real Estate Academy. We also just acquired at that time as well an online auction platform called Auction Now. So up until that conversation, I had a real estate business been in real estate for 32 years. I had that business for about 12 years in Lower North Shore. And Realtair was born out of, I guess, the frustration of not really being able to scale that business and scale our sales team. So we basically used, I guess, all that funding, selling the real estate business, funded Realtair that way. Once that kind of ran out, which it does very, very quickly, I then had to fund it on my mortgage, myself and one of my other funders. I still have a reasonable amount of debt today, by the way, too. So it's not all beer and Skittles unless you kind of do get to that point where I guess you reach an exit, and we've got some very happy people here, which is great. But still being on that journey, you know, we're still we're on a path of profitability, and I guess our initial investment with REA has been great because it's provided us with a huge accessibility to a customer base we might not have normally got to. It's got us there a lot quicker. But it all came about really because it just started with a simple conversation that then you know, we went from data to, well, you know, the COVID-19 turned up, and I'm not going to lie and say that wasn't helpful. Terrible thing, but it was very helpful for our business. And also helpful, I guess, for the industry as well, equally for REA and others and Domain and alike. But we were then in a very privileged position to be able to advance further with the support of REA to be able to provide a service to an industry that was in desperate need of it. So it was opportune, and we also were very privileged to be in that position.
Chris, did you guys approach Domain, or did Domain come to you?
So the short version is we knew, because we're a B2B company effectively, and especially supplying to government, were it not for the pre-existing relationship the Victorian Value General had with Thomson Reuters, we probably would have struggled renewing the contract with them and going after a secondary large state government. We needed to scale, and we needed to scale fast. So we actually looked to do a large cap raise, and that probably started at the beginning of 2021. And those conversations very quickly turned into, so we approached people for cap raise, and those kind of conversations very quickly turned into, it actually makes more sense for us to, those companies that we spoke to said it makes more sense for us to acquire you. So it very quickly turned into a competitive sale process. But we were very keen on an earn-out, and for those interested, the reason it's a 5-year earn-out is that's literally the maximum you can have under Australian law to benefit for the capital gains tax look-through provision. So the longest earn-out you can have and benefit from capital gains tax is 5 years. So that's the longest runway we could have.
Awesome. So what was the wooing like? Was it... was there wooing?
There was. I mean, I think you don't do this on your own. I think if you do it on your own, you're probably silly to try and do it alone. We chose Adastra, who spun out of Investec. I can't speak highly enough of Adastra. And James Yee, who was the main point of contact that we used. If anyone wants his details after this, I'm happy to give them. He was fantastic. I don't know anyone who probably hasn't bumped into James Yee at some point. Like our other co-founder, my other two co-founders, Louis Cyrillis especially, anyone who's met him knows he's an absolute meeting machine. And I would say he approached the sale of our business the way VCs often approach investing in a business. You'll often hear somebody that buys a business or invests in a business will say something along the lines of, apart from the product and the technology, we're investing in the people and the founders, so we want to get to know the founders. And I think if you're selling your business or taking an investment, you need to have the same mindset. So we got to know the people at Domain and others, and for us, it was the people at Domain naturally had a very shared vision and actually understood the value proposition of our business better than the others that we were talking to. So we were very quickly sort of honed in on Domain, made the most obvious sense. But I think you should approach, if you are in the fortunate position to be able to sell your business or raise capital, you should approach that relationship the way a venture capitalist approaches investing in your business.
And so Sarah, CoreLogic had an amazing data set that you guys were really keen to get your hands on. That made a lot of sense, and they had they liked your business plan. But was there psychology behind, it's your baby, literally, Rita. Was there psychology in getting to that, actually, I'm going to sell my baby to someone?
Yeah, look, I've got 4 kids, and about the same time that we was being acquired, my oldest teenager, who turns 19 this year, she was moving out of home to go and study and everything, so it was a bit of a double whammy for me. But I think that's why we had the baby. That's why we had baby number 4, just to kind of keep it at home. But look, no, I think we started Rita with the, knowing that this would not be our baby forever, and that we would have to share our baby if she was going to realise her potential. The language that I'm using is probably testimony that we've gone quite mad and actually humanised Rita to the point that it is no longer recognisable as a toolkit. But I think there was always going to be that natural evolution that Rita needed bigger friends, and she needed to go off to high school, and that's always been our narrative. But we'll always be her mum and dad, and so we're not done with Rita. It's just de-risked, and now there's an enormous platform that we can explore in, and so that was a huge part of our goal.
And Pete, what's it like? Is, you know, a really big company like REA having a shareholding in you guys? It's probably tempting to feel like the underdog or the you know, like the small you know, the David in that battle. Is it like that, or what's the relationship been like with REA? And what's your advice to managing it to make sure it's not?
Yeah, okay. Well, look, again, we never started with the intention of doing that, and again, much like it was, as Chris described, it kind of evolved to that point and the thing that was critical for me personally as the CEO, but also as, you know, I've got a very close link to the industry, was probably just making sure that the relationships were right. So it wasn't really about REA, and it wasn't about a portal, or it wasn't anything about that. The reason why we ended up doing a deal with REA allowing them to invest in the company was because of the relationships. So a number of key people that we spent time with, and first we started talking about integrations and all those sort of bits and pieces, and then we talked about what we could do together, and it just became more apparent. And there was even a point at which we were sort of not even talking about equity, we were just talking about how we could work well together. And then it just turned into an equity conversation. And I'm not going to lie, there was a bit of nervousness around that. The industry and its perception of portals is not always at the highest level. But, you know, the thing that I had supreme confidence in, particularly being a representative of the industry as well, is that the people that have got responsibility for the growth of REA are as invested in the future of where real estate is going, how we can improve the relationship with the customer and agents in that journey in the sales transaction process, that it made it really a no-brainer for me to partner with them. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the David and Goliath thing, I don't think it'd be very unreasonable to say, well, look, you know, you don't feel like that at times. But they're the minimal times, and that's more a thing that you probably just keep looking at yourself and keep feeling sometimes that you feel that way because you're dealing with a big company, and that's probably more emphasised in the fact in the decision-making part of things, where in a small business you can make decisions really, really quickly. When you're involved with a bigger business, you can make a decision, but then they've got to make a decision. That can take a bit of time and causes a bit of frustration. So my only real, I guess, tip to anybody in that position is, you know, if you're getting into something, and it's like most things, it's if it's hard to get in, it's going to be hard to manage. It's going to be really, really hard to get out. It was really easy, comfortable, and natural for us to be involved, and that's the way that the relationship has continued now over the last 2 years. So I've been really happy with it.
So what I'm hearing is that it's not about the money, and it's not about the ego of selling to the big name. It's actually about the alignment and the shared vision and the trust on both sides that everybody's going to deliver. That was
essential. And even though we aligned on all of that too, I wasn't sure what the industry reaction to that was going to be. And then when I did a few calls with some key people that I respect enormously, and their response was, "Well, you'd be crazy not to. Like, you know, if they're the best partner," and that was really humbling, because, you know, I didn't necessarily think I'd get that reaction. And then since then, it's been really valuable. There's always little hiccups along the way, but it's the leadership in our business and REA's business is aligned on where we see the industry going in the future.
Chris, has anything changed in your business since you've moved over to Domain? Or what's changed? What's different?
It's hard to know what hasn't changed. So one of the good things is where the corporate part of our business is sort of fully integrated into the PDS business unit. So it actually feels good to be able to contribute to Domain in a meaningful way. So we are actually the corporate part of our business, the AVMs, the indices, and sort of, especially Louis and myself, based in Sydney, being able to contribute to the PDS business unit, which is sort of the corporate business unit. That's been actually a lot of fun, and there's just sort of talking with some ex-CoreLogic colleagues before, where you see a lot of the names popping up at REA, PEXA, Proptech, everyone's kind of...
Yeah, big shout out to all the ex-CoreLogicans.
There's a lot of people circling around, and there's a real dearth of talent in terms of people that know property information and analytics and data. So it's been great to contribute to Domain. But by the same token, you know, It's different when you're approaching a very large corporate customer with a large SaaS platform and saying you're part of the domain group, as opposed to I'm IDS and we've got 22 staff in Melbourne. And they're like, well, so to give you an example of the dilemma, in Victoria, our VM Online platform processes all of the statutory valuations in Victoria, and that represents 20%. So land tax represents 20% and council rates 20% of the state budget of Victoria. So $9 billion worth of revenue is based on the statutory valuations that are processed on the platform. So it makes it very difficult for them so they basically stuck with us because it was easier to stay with the platform that was already embedded. But we had to put in parent guarantees, we had to put code in escrow, etc., because we're a startup. Now that you're part of the domain group, all of that goes away. So there's an element of scale, but it's also, I don't want to say it's just good to be part of a big company, because also, from Jason Pellegrino all the way down to the executive leadership team, etc., we have a lot of support within domain, and there's a huge focus on government, and that was really important to us to know that the part of the sort of dance of choosing a suitor was making sure that the people that you're talking to actually do really share the vision that you have, and they really did in our case. So.
Yeah. And Sarah, how has it changed for Rita? Like, what's different working in psychology?
I think what was really great about how our deal came about and how it was structured is that they bought our plan, and so we went into it, with a vision and with kind of a clear mandate of execution priorities. And so it's been really easy for them to kind of get out of the way. And I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, but to be in an environment where to move into 2022 with an acquisition like 21 and know exactly what 2022 is going to look like was really empowering. And so we didn't, we were concerned about, will our momentum slow? Will we, and it didn't, because we had that clear plan. And I think we spent a lot of time, and our DD did drag on a little bit. We spent a lot of time getting into and we had great people on the team, really getting into the nitty-gritty of detail on contracts and things. And my view on share sale agreements and earn-out agreements and things like that is that good contracts make good relationships, because it usually means that you've thought about all of the different scenarios. And I also have the belief that if after you've got that really good contract, if you've got to look at it, you probably don't have a partnership. Yeah. So the contract's worth a lot less than the process of forming it. And so we'd kind of anticipated and been through a lot of these scenarios in the lead up, and I would just encourage everyone to make sure that it's like a marriage. You're going into a relationship and it's a bigger company and there's a new power dynamic and all of these things, but make sure you kind of anticipate your needs and the needs of your people, because I think as a founder going through that journey, your biggest job is to protect the soul of your vision and protect the safety of your people. And I think taking that approach and co-creating our future with CoreLogic in that planning diligence stage meant that we didn't have turnover, we didn't lose momentum, we didn't have those issues. But if they did come up, we had contractual devices to deal with them. We just haven't had to use them.
But that's really important.
You need
isn't
a solid prenup.
You need a solid prenup, and that really is important, isn't it? Because if you guys are working to an earn-out, and then once you get inside, the power dynamic takes away your power to achieve that earn-out, you're kind of screwed, right? That's the official scientific term for it. Yeah. Pete, what's your advice to fellow PropTechs considering either exiting or approaching looking for corporate investment?
Well, it's probably a little bit tougher now than what it was for us, I'd have to say. But look, our journey was. Look, I've got to be frank. I'm not a tech CEO. I've got the title of that. I'm a real estate agent. I have been for 32 years, and that's what I do. So I'm the subject matter expert on that. So I've actually been fortunate enough in the very early part of our journey to have some good people that understand this much better than I do. Without the team that I've got around me today and I had early in the piece, I probably wouldn't be in the position that I'm in today. So I guess going back to that point about recruiting the right people and working with the right people and looking after those people is critically important, but that is for any business. But the thing that I've found about the journey early, I had to take on that advice because, before we even contemplated doing anything with REA, which by the way took like 9 months. So you talk about, the lead up to these sort of things, it's never quick.
No.
Was the fact that I had so many conversations with so many different people, VC investors, and probably the thing that was the most valuable for me was just talking to people who had been through it before, getting their advice. Like Chris mentioned, guys like James E that provide advice in that space. They're good people to talk to. Having a network of those sort of people so you can learn the ins and outs. Talking to people who have been through the process to find out what they do differently. That was really insightful for a lot of the conversations that we had when we took investment early. But also too, I think the other part of it is that, this is not just about sort of approaching somebody who's going to be your end, could be your end buyer. It's a journey, and I look at the journey. I went from sort of our first VC investment, which came from a company called APC. That got referred to me by the guys at ActivePipe because they actually had them as initial investors. I interviewed 7 other VC firms with no real interest because they didn't actually understand what it is that we do. But I was very fortunate to be able to be introduced to APC because they'd been through that before and I could talk to somebody who'd actually dealt with them specifically. So I knew what I was going to be getting myself into. And then they basically said to me, well, look, if you go and raise 1.5 mil privately, we'll go and fund you for another 1.5. So then I was in a whole new world, which, I know we haven't kind of covered off here, but when you get to the friends and family stuff, and that was the thing that I felt most uncomfortable with. It was much more comfortable dealing with VCs and corporates than it was friends and family. Well, because I started my presentation, and I did like 5 or 6 in my mates' houses, and I took a little screen with me, and I took my little data projector and had my presentation, and I started the same way every time, where I said, I'm just going to tell you that we're doing this, and I'm going to talk to you about investing in the company, but I'm just going to say up front that I'd really prefer that you don't. Because I don't want the burden of taking you on this journey. I'm happy to lose my own. Well, not happy, but I accept that I could and risk that, but I don't want to lose yours. And that burden was really hard to get over. But once you kind of then, spend a bit of time in this space, I've learnt so much. I don't have any expertise. I'm probably not the best person to ask about what you should do next, except just share the journey that I've had. The most important thing is always in any of these things is to talk to people about their journey, but also try and get referrals. And the whole thing with us in dealing with REA, as I said earlier, it was nothing to do with the company. It wasn't to do with the money. It was about what we could do together. And if we shared that same vision, and I think if you don't have that at the outset, then you're talking to the wrong people.
Sarah, what's your advice?
I think I just gave it. Look, my advice is really to take care of your people. And I think, probably when I think about the value of our company and what it was, I think you'd probably get different answers out of me and Ian. The product, obviously, the CapEx and the software and all the rest of it obviously has some value. But, if I think about there's lots of great tech out there. There's lots of really good code bases and Symmetry. And I think about what that driving force that got us to being not just valuable but purchasable, and it was definitely about our people and our relationships. And so in terms of making sure that the acquisition was successful and that our future state was going to continue with that trust architecture and equity that and those relationships that we had with the industry that we were serving, we had to very much keep that front of mind. And I think in terms of why CoreLogic was such a logical partner for us is because it was private equity, because it's independent, and obviously the big data playground is fun. But I think in terms of just preserving, it can't just all be about product. And so preserving the safety and the transition, and just managing that in a way that is really sensitive to all of the different things that you as founders, the acquirers, your people, their people, like it's like a blended family. There's kids. It's not just a marriage. There's kids, and and they have to get along, and that has to be sensible. And you have to, our sales team has to get on with the CoreLogic sales team, because it would be ridiculous if we couldn't take advantage of the customer reach that exists there. And so, knowing that there will be some alignment and tessellation, and that's a really good thing, that it's all part of your maturation journey, and that both of you have to change and you can both learn from each other. And I actually think that's what's been really successful about our journey, is there's never been, there's not a competition for resources. There's not a us and them. It's like, we're smushing in here and creating that alignment, and that doesn't have to be painful. It can be quite fun if you approach it with curiosity and safety.
What about you, Chris? What's your advice?
I won't rehash everything everyone has said, but they all have themes that resonate with me. I guess the one thing I'd say is, I agree with Peter that I think it's only going to get tougher for PropTechs for the next couple of years. I think some of the VC funding and investing is probably going to be a little bit not drying up, but
yeah, we've got some speakers coming up soon to talk about that.
There'll be a lot of scrutiny, but I would say the 2 or 3 things I learned along the way is, number one, and we're lucky that 2 of the 3 co-founders happen to also be lawyers or legal training background. It's a business, so when you start a PropTech, get a shareholders agreement in place. Make sure you maintain your share registry. Make sure you do your corporate governance. It may feel stupid, but have a quarterly board meeting and make sure you do all of that stuff, so that when DD came along, it was painless for us, because all of that stuff was in place. You don't expect it, but if you do anything in the government or banking stuff, you need to know what information security is. You need to have a BCP, a business continuity plan, disaster recovery plan, a risk committee, and you may be wearing the same hat, and because there's only 10 of you, but you need to do all of that stuff because it makes your business sellable. And the other bit was the moment you take investment. So we had raised money before we went for the large cap raise, which ended up with Domain acquiring us. The moment you take an investment from a third party, their business colleagues, their friends, etc., you really feel that burden, because losing your own money or your own time, that's on you. Losing someone else's money is really, that kept, I think, us up at night.
Embarrassing, isn't it?
Well, it's more than
It can make Christmas very awkward.
I don't think it's embarrassing. I think for me there's a sense of guilt, or a sense of, I'm responsible for someone's money, right? So they've invested in the business. I think it kept our focus, because there's probably a period in 2018 or 2019 before we pivoted to the government space where you thought, if it was not for the fact that we'd already raised significant funds from third parties, we may have said, going up against Domain and CoreLogic and PropTrack, or HomeTrack at the time, in the AVM space is too hard. Let's just go back to corporate life. But it was the fact that we had this burden that kept us going.
Awesome. Well, Chris, Sarah, Peter, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely fantastic hearing about your journeys as selling into or to big corporates out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.